Yes, class. The plant cell has three compartments. First is vacuole, then tonoplast, then protoplasm, then plasma membrane, then cell wall. उसके बाद है यहाँ पर कि these compartments are separated by selectively permeable membrane, that is also known as animal membrane, and tonoplast and the plasma membrane. The vacuolar membrane is called tonoplast and separated by the vacuoles and the protoplasm, and the plasma membrane separated by the protoplasm and the cell wall. The tonoplast and the plasma membrane are selectively permeable, while cell wall is freely permeable, and the selectively permeable membrane permits the passage of some substances, but not of the others. The movement of the water from one cell to another depends upon the water relation of the plant cell. The selectively permeable plasma membrane plays a very important role in it. Some of the some of the terms to understand the concepts are water potential solutes or the osmotic pressures, and the potential diffusion, osmosis, and turgor pressure. Beside these terms, this chapter is also cover the theories related to absorption and the movement of the water from the soil into leaves, and translocation of the food from and leaves to different part of the plant. Then water potential. The, all an understanding of the term water potential is important to understand the water relation with water movement to the plant. In thermodynamics, the free energy represents the total the potential to do work, and the potential energy of the water is refers to the water potential. Water potential is regarded as a tendency of the water to leave the system, and it is often used while explaining the direction in which water will flows from one cell to another, from one part to another another plant, like from soil to root, and from root to leaves, and from leaves to air. And the water always moves from the region to higher potential to the lower potential. Water potential represented by the Greek letter phi, and it measured in Pascal and the megapascal or bar. One bar being close to 1 atmospheric pressure, that is 1 bar is equals to 0.987 atmospheric pressure. 1 megapascal is equal to 10 bars. Then at atmospheric pressure, the water potential of the pure water is zero. Hence, all the solutions in the atmospheric pressure have lower water potential than the water that is having the negative value. Uh, Next, absorption of water in by plants. Water can also absorb through the stems and the leaves. The bulk of the absorption by the roots, and it is an estimate by the Dr. Detmer at the at the lower state university, that the total length of the roots minus root is formed by the single ray plant, that is scalicerials, is about 620 kilometers. They can be spread in an area of 255 square meter. The root hair lack cuticles and provide a large surface area. They take in the water to the uh, to the intervening space between the osmosis. A considerable amount of the water can also be absorbed beyond the root hair zone toward the root apex. These cells are lack of the cuticles, and the water absorbed by the root hairs moves along with the path in figure 1.2 as given below, in which there is a plant in which the roots are present, and the water is supplied from this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is a step 1 in which the root absorb water and move from the roots to the stem, and then the stem to the leaves, and leaves them to the air. And then there is a anatomical diagram. There is a ts of root in which root hair are present, and the middle part is called root cortex, then root in the soil, then soil particles, then root hairs, and the epidermis. The inner part is called epidermis, and the inner part is called xylem in which the water transport easily. There is a xylem, then यहाँ पे water in the soil, then root hairs, then endodermis, then root cortex, then endodermis again, then xylem, and then upward movement through the interconnected by xylem. Then then petiole, then leaves, then 1 to 2% used up in photosynthesis, then evaporation through the stomata, 98 to 99% loss of the transpiration, in which there is a leaf. There is a leaf in which there is water supplied, and there is numerous stomatas are present, in which the water loss is there is bulk of water loss is present by the process of transpiration, and water are evaporate to the air. Next, the absorption of the root hair and root cortex. Due to the presence of the various substances like sugar and concentrated of the solute in the cell, in the cell sap and the root hairs is greater than that of the surrounding water. The cell have the lowest water potential, and 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 once the water is taken from the soil, the water can also follow three possible pathways, that is, each of the root cortex region and then the xylem vessel, in which the cuticle is absent. Apoplast pathway. The water flows along with between the cell wall to the adjacent cells through the intercellular spaces. The apoplast movement of the water is exclusively through the cell wall without crossing any membrane. Here the diagram is, in which these are the cells which are interconnected to each other, in which there is a space called vacuole, there is a cell wall, and there is a middle portion called cytoplasm, and there is a supply of water through the plasmodesmata, and there is a membrane behind the vacuole, that is called tonoplast. Then Symplast pathway. The water flows from one cell to another through the interconnected by the cytoplasmic strand is called plasmodesmata. And another is vacuolar pathway. The water flows from one vacuole to the next through the plasma membrane and tonoplast by the osmosis. Tonoplast is a membrane that surrounds the vacuole. One of the three pathway, apoplast pathway, is considered to be the most important, as it seems to offer least resistance and result in the mass flows of the water through the water cortex to the root cortex as a result of the rest of the transpiration. The movement of water by the vacuolar pathway is considered to be the negligible amount, and the absorption of water from root cortex to the xylem element. In the root cortex, the apoplast movement of the water occur without the resistance, and beyond the cortex, when water reaches the endodermis and the innermost layer of the cortex. The Caspian strip of the endodermis block this movement of water. Caspian strip is a waxy layer of suberin is present in the lateral cells and lateral cell wall in the form of the band. Suberin being waterproof prevent the flows of the water and the solute through it, and instead direct from through water and endodermal cytoplasm. This way the cells exercise control over the intake of water and mineral from the soil. Beyond the endodermis, till the xylem and the water and the solute passes through the cell membranous membranes is called transmembrane pathway, and through the tonoplast, the membrane surrounded by the vacuoles, the vacuolar pathway. The endodermis, with a unique structure control which solute or ions, reaches to the xylem. Once the water reaches to the root xylem, and it moves upward toward the stem and the leaves to the transpiration pole. There is an anatomical diagram in which we understand better, in which there is an endodermis layer, there is endodermis cells, and then there is a root here, and then there is cortex, and then these are the endodermis cells. Then the other layer of the pericycle, and then the vascular bundles, where the xylem and phloem is present. Then there is the supply of water and minerals from through the root hair, because the root hair is a porous, and the symplast pathway through the cell membrane and the cytoplasm of the cell. Next, the important terms related to the movement of water. First is diffusion. It is an important process in which the molecule of the gas or a solute moves from one area, one area of the higher concentration to the lower concentration. This is called diffusion, but the osmosis in which the molecule of the gas or the solute moves from the lower concentration to the higher concentration. That is called osmosis. That there is a great difference between diffusion and the osmosis, and the diffusion gradient. It is a random movement which uh, which um, uh, which occurs when there is a difference in the concentration. Concentration is called diffusion gradient, and as well as there is a when the difference between the concentration of the water and the sugar, then it is known as osmosis gradient also. When when the molecules get equally distributed, no gradient exists, and the cells are diffused, plays an important role in keeping the dissolved material disper- dispersed disperse the protoplasm. In case of the gases, each gas diffusion from the region of the higher partial pressure to that of the loss of the partial pressure, that down the pressure gradient for diffusion to take place through a membrane. The membrane should be fully permeable to the molecules or the ion in question. The cell membrane are permeable to both the gases, that is CO2 and O2. Hence they are able to diffuse freely, and the diffusion is more rapid in gases than in liquid. Larger the diffusion, la- larger the differences in the concentration, more rapid the flow of molecules. And when there is no further movement of the molecules, there is said to be the state of the equilibrium, and in which that the diffusing substances is evenly distributed. In plants, the intake of CO2 from the atmosphere to leaves during photosynthesis and the loss of water vapors from the leaves during transpiration occurs by the diffusion. There is another diagram from which we understand better. There is a there is a copper sulfate CuSO4 crystals which are present in the water molecules, and there is a diffusion of copper sulfate molecules with the water molecules. There is a copper sulfate molecule in which it is present as solid, in which there is no interstitial spaces between them, so they are not easily dissolved with water. But there is another diagram in which diffusion of the copper sulfate solution, in which the molecules are freely and they easily dissolve with water molecules. We cannot say that the copper sulfate molecules are dissolved with water, but they are separately moved with water molecules. And then there is osmosis. The movement of the molecules across the semi-permeable or the selectively permeable membrane is known as osmosis, and the movement of the molecules from the animal membrane is also known as osmosis. Osmosis can be regarded as a special kind of diffusion of water molecules from the region of their higher concentration to their lower concentration, or from the state of the solution of the concentrated solution through a semi permeable membrane in figure 1.6. There is a physical state system. Osmosis depends upon the three factors: temperature, pressure, and number of solute molecules. There is a pure water in which the molecules are pure, and the other is sucrose solution. Sucrose is a form of carbohydrate in which it is a form of sugar, and these molecules are bigger than the pure molecules. There is another diagram where the movement of the water A to B, in which the pure molecules are moved toward the sucrose molecules through a dotted line that through a dotted line that is known as semi-permeable membrane or the animal membrane, in which the pure solutions are moved toward the sucrose solution. This is occur because there is a higher concentration of the pure molecules to the lower concentration. This is known as diffusion. But when the when the from but when the movement of the molecule when the movement of the water molecules from higher concentration to the lower concentration, this is known as osmosis. Next, the temperature is keeping the pressure constant when the semi-permeable membrane separated by the pure water on two sides, each given by the different temperature. The molecules of the water will move from the region of the high temperature to the lower temperature. Pressure keeping the temperature constant when the water on the two sides of the subjected to the different pressure, and the water molecules will diffuse from the higher pressure side to the lower pressure side. Solute molecules. When pure water is separated from the solution is given the strength in figure 1.6. For example, 1% of the sucrose solution by the semi-permeable membrane. There is another diagram from which we understand better. There is a sap exuded from the cut end. There is a plant in which there is a sap exuded from the stem. That means we are talking about the essence of sap. Water rises from the tube, in which we cover the plant with a capillary tube with a rubber tube, and then there is this is stem, and in which the water rises in the tube. Next, the mercury manometer is measured the root pressure, in which there is a stem and which is covered with the rubber tube, and this is called the manometer. And manometer this is called the mercury manometer, in which this dark fluid is called mercury filled in it. And when the water is when the measure whether when the water is absorbed by the roots, and they are moved from this stem, then the mercury rises up, and this means the increase in the root pressure. Next, it occurs through the specialized pores called the hydrathodes present near the vein ending. The quite common in young grass seedlings, and in the tropical rainforest due to the dim light and high humidity. Tomato and Nestridium are some of the common examples. There is another diagram from which we understand better. If we drop in the vein end, there are the drops in the veins end. This is a leaf, and the structure is like this. This is petiole, and this is stalk, and this is whole leaf portion, in which these are the veins, and these veins are bifurcated, and there is a midrib, and this is called the steel. No, this is called the center portion, in which when the veins are present, these drops are aligned through the leaf. And there is an anatomical diagram in which hydrothode, there is a the upper dark line which represent the cuticles, and the inner cells called epidermis. Then then the regular cells are known as cortex. Then these cells which are overlap to each other is called xylem, and these cells which are interwoven to each other, these are called vein ending. And then these cells which are freely present, these are called epitheme, and these cells which are parallelly arranged, this is known as which holds which holds these epithemes, and another sequence which are present here. These are called the air chambers, and these and the other and then the last just allow.